Well, my desk is almost clear of debris because I have a few things I need to do today. And one of them is to show you and you and you a pen I got on eBay. And this is just to show that, you know, I look at items on eBay with rose-colored glasses, and I thought maybe, I didn't know for sure, but I thought maybe this nib would be flexible on this Schaefer desk pen. It was just the pen, no base, but I'll explain why I like these in a minute. But the nib was not flexible in the way that I thought it might be. Instead, it is like this. It's one of these very fine nibs that when you do apply pressure, you do get some degree of variety. Come on, how can you see that? There we go. And, you know, these aren't wet noodles by any stretch of the imagination, but wet noodles aren't good all the time. Yes, they're sort of like eating a big piece of chocolate cake with maple syrup on top of it and a big piece of bacon. Just make it your ideal food. But it's not like, oh my God, I can't possibly believe I ate that when you're done, even though you were in orgiastic spasms as you were eating it. That bacon and maple syrup and chocolate all mixed together. But when you're done with it, you think, oh my God, that was horrible. So a wet noodle is kind of like that. Yes, it's great to make a word, maybe. But if you had to write an actual sentence, you'd need a piece of paper about as big as this whole desk because of the gallons of ink that it can put out when it's going strong. So a nib like this is good when you want to write an entire sentence and you want to still have the joy of shading from 0 to 1, not 0 to 10. Sometimes being subtle is better for you. It's like eating a healthy salad with maybe bacos, not real bacon, but synthetic bacon to give you that little tiny bit of fun that you require. So here is that pen. Now the reason I like desk pens while I'm sitting at my desk drawing, desk pens normally are you know, things with bases. They look like this. This is a very modest one. Sometimes they're marble and they've got sculpted animals and elephants and lions and tigers and bears, and there are two pens, one for red ink, one for black ink or whatever, and sometimes there's one with a pencil and one with the pen, but those are often seen on the desks of important people who have important power, and they sign checks and write pink slips and sign contracts and stuff like that. But for me, an artist, and for you, an artist or a calligrapher, look at what I just did. I gesticulated. You shouldn't do that when you're holding as Frank Dubiel, a friend of mine, once said, an ink bomb in your hand. Now, see what happened? I lost my train of thought. When you're an artist like me, or a calligrapher, or a writer who sits at a desk and works, actually does something other than just scribble or sign a check or sign a contract, where you're actually pondering the words you're using in your novel you're writing, or drawing your millionth cross-hatched line on the portrait of a Cocker Spaniel that you were hired to do, or whatever you might be doing with a pen. Having a pen like this is perfectly fine at your desk. You don't need to have it even have a holder. You'd take it out of a drawer. In my case, I have dozens of these pens that are missing their bases. And for me, I could have dozens of bases on my desk and I wouldn't have any room for the thing I'm working on. So I just have a drawer full of desk pens. And under this drawer is another drawer full of desk pens. And, oops, sorry, you can't see it. And then another drawer of desk pens. Oh, those aren't desk pens. Those are desk pens. You see? And these all have different nibs, which I know which nib is in which pen, because I selected the pen to go in the drawer based on the nib that it had. And sometimes when I use colored inks, I will put okay, I'll just show you. So, I use this with red ink for clear, obvious reasons. I use this one for blue ink. That's blue. Yes, it is blue. Sorry, it's hard to see. And I use this for speckled ink. Now, this is a pencil. This is a really cool pencil. Waterman pencil. Anyway, but what's nice about this is when you're sitting at your desk, you can fill the pen up and you can write with it. I often will just dip, just because I don't need to fill it to do the work I do. But you could fill it and write all day long. And as long as you're not, getting up and having lunch and things like that, you don't need to put it back in the holder. Holders themselves are rarely as airtight as a cap will be on a pen. So oftentimes when you do take them out of the holder, you have to jump start it a bit. So I generally just leave them empty and dip them like this. So the other nice thing about a pen like this is it's usually from here to there is one slender, my kitty's coming up here now, is one slender, smooth, unadulterated, unvaried shape. Sometimes you might have threads here, because some desk pens were convertible to the pocket pen. They were designed that way, where you'd buy essentially a kit. You'd buy a pen that came with a base, and you could take off the blind cap and put on a taper, and you could turn it into a desk pen. But most desk pens are relatively smooth from the point to the taper. And it's really a nice thing to do where you can, if you're a drawer, not so much if you're a writer, but if you're a drawer, to move your hand way back like this and draw. Most people who paint pictures hold the brush way back here, not way up here, because their hand would get smudged in the paint that's still wet. And also when you're holding the pen back here, you can see more of the drawing you're working on. And so it's really kind of nice to use one of these pens. The downside is, especially if you're like me and you have a drafting table you're working at, you put it on the table and it will roll off. and land more likely than not point first. So you have to be careful about that. You put it in a coffee cup. Or something to keep it safe. But, you know, I have a feeling if I, you know, turn my clock way ahead and start selling my pen collection to people who deserve it, not you. You. The reason why I don't want to sell it to you is because, well, you know why. But anyway, I'm going to sell it to you and you and you. Is, you know, I'm getting old and I need money, and you know, won't be able to work anymore, so maybe I'll start selling my pen collection off. And desk pens are not very collectible, especially when they don't have bases like this one. But I can use them. So these might be the last pens I sell. These are the ones that will be in the drawer here when my niece and nephew clear out my worldly belongings. And they'll say, why did Uncle Pierre keep these? But they're really good. So for you and you and you who are artists, or you and you and you who are calligraphers, or you and you who are accountants and mathematicians and people who use pens for something other than writing your name, desk pens without sockets at your desk are perfectly fine. They'll work 93% as well as a pocket pen. So there you go. I wanted this to be a flexible nib pen. Instead I got one that's fine and just slightly flexible. Most people would think that this was not flexible at all, but it is. They would be wrong. I would have to correct them, because there is a little bit of give. It's just so subtle, and it would be very easy not to be able to. If I just wrote with this without thinking, without any effort, I would say this wasn't flexible. But if I use my hand and my brain and remember that it's not just putting the pen to paper and applying pressure and writing, it's lifting up on the pen, letting it whisper, and then letting it shout, or in this case, whisper louder. Those stage whispers where you can hear them in the back row. Little does he know, I've got a gun. You know, if you were in the first row, your eardrums would be burst. Well, anyway, there you go. Perfectly good. Bye.